All right, let's dive right in. We're going to look at how one of the oldest industries on the planet, oil and gas, is being completely reshaped by one of the newest, cloud computing. And believe me, the connection is way more profound than you might think.
For most of us, when we hear the cloud, we probably think of a digital filing cabinet, right? A place for our photos and documents. And yeah, it's useful, but it hardly seems revolutionary. But what if I told you that's like looking at an oil reserve and just seeing a good place to bury something? Yeah, the reality is, it's way more powerful than that. See, in today's digital world, especially in these huge industries like energy, cloud computing isn't just about storage. It is the fuel. It's the energy source that powers everything else. So, to really get a grip on its impact, we first have to understand the world that existed before it.
So, before the cloud really took off, the oil and gas industry was living in what you could call a world of constraint. I mean, they had these massive ideas, but they were totally hamstrung by the physical limits of computing at the time.
This is what computing used to look like. It wasn't some icon on your screen, right? It was these huge, sprawling, multi-million-dollar data centers, and companies had to own and maintain every single piece of this crazy complex hardware all by themselves. It was slow, it was so expensive, and it was incredibly limiting. And this really shows you just how deep those limitations went. I mean, computing power wasn't something you just used. No, it had to be rationed out, like some scarce resource. You had teams just waiting for their turn to run an analysis. And storage? Storing the ridiculous amounts of data from something like a seismic survey was just prohibitively expensive. In fact, the data itself was so huge, you couldn't even move it efficiently. It just created these massive, massive bottlenecks everywhere. But then, this new digital fuel shows up. And just like discovering a new energy source, it completely changed the game. And this slide just illustrates the shift perfectly with a fantastic analogy. So think about the Wright brothers, right? They totally understood the principles of flight, of aerodynamics, but they were stuck. They couldn't take off until a fuel was developed that had enough energy density to power an engine that was light enough for flight. Well, the oil and gas industry was in a really similar spot. They had these powerful tools like AI and advanced analytics, but they were missing the compute density to really let them fly. So, what is compute density? This is the key. It's not about owning a bunch of hardware anymore. It's about getting access to massive, shareable, on-demand computer power, processing, memory, bandwidth, the whole shebang, that you can just rent whenever you need it. That is the core of what the cloud gives you. And this one simple shift, it takes the industry from that old world of constraint to a brand new world of abundance. All of a sudden, computing power isn't this rare thing you have to carefully ration out. It's basically an infinite resource that's always on tap.
And get this is the result of that abundance. The cost just plummets. Instead of shelling out millions for a data center, a manager can now get their hands on mission-critical, enterprise-level computing services for as little as $2,000 a month. Think about that. It completely democratizes power and innovation.
Okay, so how does this whole thing actually work? Well, the cloud isn't just one single thing. You can think of it more like a toolkit with different service models, and each one is designed for a specific job. The three main layers you'll hear about are Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS, Platform as a Service, or PaaS, and Software as a Service, SaaS. It's kind of like a pyramid, Each layer builds on the one right below it. So let's break them down. All right, at the very bottom, you've got IaaS. This is the most fundamental level. Think of it like you're renting the raw land and the building materials. You're not buying the server racks or the actual physical data center. You're just renting access to all that stuff from big providers like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft. So, in a nutshell, IaaS gives you those fundamental building blocks. It's the core infrastructure, that raw horsepower, but without the massive headache and cost of actually owning and maintaining it yourself. Okay, moving up a layer, we get to PaaS. Now, if IaaS is the raw material, then PaaS is the workshop. It's this ready-made environment where developers can build, test, and deploy their own custom applications without ever having to worry about the underlying infrastructure. This creates what they call a learn fast culture, where you can test ideas really quickly and cheaply. So basically, PaaS gives your tech teams the platform and all the tools they need to create unique solutions for your specific business problems. It just supercharges innovation. And finally, at the very top of the pyramid, we have SaaS. This is the model that, honestly, we're all probably the most familiar with. It's the finished product. We're talking about things like Adobe Creative Cloud or SAP's enterprise software. You don't build it, you don't host it, you just subscribe and you use it. And the huge advantage here is that the software is always up to date. You can say goodbye to those long installation cycles or waiting for the next big upgrade. You get new features and, more importantly, critical security patches like instantly. They're just delivered right over the internet. Okay, so we have our toolkit, right? IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Now, let's see how this new fuel is actually powering the engine of the oil and gas industry in the real world. Let's take upstream operations, the high-stakes world of finding and pulling resources from deep beneath the earth. This is where some of the biggest and most complicated data challenges live, and it's where the cloud is having a truly massive impact. And this slide, this connects all the dots perfectly. Remember all those old problems we talked about? Well, now IaaS provides that nearly infinite computing power you need to process petabytes of seismic data in hours, not months. Using PAUSE, an engineer can whip up a custom app that predicts equipment failure on a rig before it happens, saving millions. And those communication bottlenecks? Poof, they're gone. It even breaks down the walls between companies, letting them securely share real-time drilling data with a specialist supplier on the other side of the planet. And this right here is the secret sauce for modern analytics. By parking these enormous data sets right next to the powerful analytical tools, all in the same cloud environment, companies can run these incredibly complex simulations. They can model an entire reservoir's behavior with a new level of precision, helping them decide the exact best place to drill with a confidence that was just impossible before. You completely sidestep those old bottlenecks. So we come right back to our central idea. The cloud isn't just another tool. It's a completely new kind of fuel. It's providing the energy for a deep, fundamental transformation. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question. As this powerful new fuel gets even more integrated, what other seemingly impossible digital frontiers will it help a traditional industry like this conquer next?